Alright people, today we're tackling one of the biggest unsung heroes, or villains, of the MBTI world, the SJs. That's right, the dependable, responsible, tradition-loving types who keep society running like a well-oiled machine. Or, depending on your perspective, the people who refuse to let things change, even when change is screaming at them with a megaphone. So, today's burning question. Are SJs the backbone of society, or just stuck in the past? Are they the sturdy foundation that keeps civilization from collapsing into pure chaos? Or are they just gatekeeping outdated traditions, like that one grandparent who still thinks the internet is a fad? Let's break it down, ENTP style. Witty, blunt, and probably getting a few SJs mad at me by the end. Spoiler, they'll probably leave a strongly worded comment about respecting structure. Let's get into it. First things first. Who are we talking about? In MBTI, SJs, sensing judges, include ESTJ, the no-nonsense executive, bossing everyone around since birth. ISTJ, the rulebook keeper. If it ain't broken, don't fix it. And also, never change it. ESFJ, the social caretaker, wants to keep everyone happy, but also expects you to follow the unspoken social rules. ISFJ, the quiet protector, loyal to a fault, and will probably remember every birthday. Forever. What do they have in common? Stability, tradition, structure, and responsibility. They thrive on consistency, and they like things done the right way, which usually means the way it's always been done. Alright, let's give credit where credit is due. SJs are the reason civilization hasn't collapsed into anarchy. They keep things running. Who's making sure the taxes are paid, the rules are followed, and that your Amazon package actually gets delivered? SJs. While the rest of us are out here chasing innovation, debating ideas, or just vibing, SJs are handling the logistics of life. They preserve stability. Change is great, until you realize it also brings uncertainty and chaos. SJs create and enforce systems, laws, and social structures that stop the world from turning into a Mad Max movie. Without them, we'd probably have entrepreneurial visionaries trying to reinvent stop signs every 5 years. They uphold traditions, for better or worse. Ever wonder why holidays, cultural customs, and social etiquette still exist? Thank an SJ. These guys remember what works and pass it down, making sure society has continuity instead of just random trends. While this sometimes means clinging to outdated stuff, it also means holding on to valuable wisdom that keeps society from reinventing the wheel every generation. Now, let's talk about the other side of the coin, because for all their strengths, SJs can be a bit resistant to change. The if it ain't broke mentality. SJs love reliability. The problem? Not everything old is good, and not everything new is bad. They sometimes act like society should run on Windows XP forever, because it works just fine. Meanwhile, NTs and MPs are out here trying to update the system before it crashes. Part 1. Blind respect for authority. Rules are important, but so is questioning them. One of the biggest frustrations I have with SJs is that they care so much about what they think is morally right for society, whereas I only care about the truth, and I don't care how uncomfortable that truth is. This is where I constantly clash with one of my best friends, who's an SJ. We get along most of the time, but when it comes to certain topics, we're like fire and ice. I always joke that he's a morality police officer, because his instinct is to uphold what's socially accepted as right. Well, I just want to find out what's actually true. Blind respect for authority. Part 2. SJs typically want to do what's right, whereas someone like me, who is very pragmatic, wants to do what's best. This difference in perspective is why they frustrate me so much. They have an ingrained respect for rules, traditions, and social values, but sometimes that makes them resistant to logic that contradicts those values. Historical context. And honestly, sometimes I blame SJs for why so many intellectuals were persecuted back in the day. There are just so many of them out there. Throughout history, intellectuals, people who challenged conventional thinking, were often seen as dangerous because SJs, in their drive to maintain order, viewed them as threats to stability. Think Galileo, Socrates, or literally anyone who had an idea that didn't match what society accepted at the time. SJs weren't necessarily the ones throwing people in prison, but they were the ones enforcing the norms that made it happen. Intellectuals versus academics. This is why I make a clear distinction between intellectuals and academics. Intellectuals push boundaries, challenge norms, and invent new ways of thinking. Academics, on the other hand, especially the more traditional ones, are often just gatekeepers of existing knowledge, maintaining what is already accepted rather than creating something new. And who thrives in academia? SJs. The stale nature of academia. They excel at preserving and enforcing knowledge, but they often lack the ingenuity to question it or take risks. That's why so much of academia can feel stale. It's more about protecting existing frameworks than tearing them down to build something better. Frustration with SJs. So, while I respect SJs for keeping things structured, I also think their tendency to stick to what's accepted rather than what's true can be incredibly frustrating. And honestly, sometimes I can't help but think that if SJs weren't so dominant in history, we'd have made way faster progress in science, philosophy, and innovation. One of the biggest frustrations I have with SJs is that they care so much about what they think is morally right for society, whereas I only care about the truth, and I don't care how uncomfortable that truth is. Fear of innovation. If you've ever had to explain new technology to an SJ, you know they're not always thrilled about change. If they had their way, we'd probably still be using fax machines and landlines in 2025. So, are SJs the backbone of society, or are they just stuck in the past? Honestly, both. So, what do you think? Are SJs the pillars of civilization, or are they holding us back from evolving? Drop your thoughts in the comments, especially if you're an SJ. I know you have a strong opinion on this, and if you're an NP or NT, do you respect the SJs for their stability, or do they drive you crazy with their resistance to change? Encouraging interaction. Let's debate, respectfully, of course, unless you're an ESTP, in which case, go wild. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who's either obsessed with tradition or constantly trying to burn it all down. Alright, stay curious, question everything, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.